Hey everyone, thanks for watching this preview on Introduction to Genetics lesson. So I'm starting off with the Google folder that you would have access to with this lesson, just so you can kind of see what all is included in here. So a couple of things. So the actual digital student notebook is here under Introduction to Genetics, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. But I did post a few other things just in case you either want to give students an opportunity to do a lab at home if you're still on distance learning, or if you happen to be in the classroom, there's some options here to do the lab in the classroom. So taking a look, there is an answer key here. The answer key is in PDF form, but it does follow the questions that are available for the students on the Introduction to Genetics notebook. And then over here we have a student version of the What's in Your in Cells lab. So this is a DNA extraction lab that students can do. It does utilize equipment that most students would be able to find at home. So this is something that you could give as an optional lab to do at home. Where it says test tubes and beakers and things like that, they can substitute in cups. So it's pretty easy to make this something that you can do at home. And then it guides them through the steps so that they can try to extract their DNA. And then a nice little visual here. So that's the student guide. The teacher guide has the same first 3 pages of instructions, but then there's also these other couple of additional pages. If you do happen to be in the classroom, these are nice ways to label and set up your beakers and test tubes. And so I like to print this on a full sheet label page and then just cut it out as labels and then have everything color coordinated, and I kind of keep a set aside for whenever I do this lab. And then there's some visuals here that you can put on the tables for students to walk through the steps of the lab. So that's just a look at the lab that's available that you can do, either send at home for students to do at home or do it in the classroom. Now let's take a look at the actual notebook that students will be working on. This is an introduction to the basic of genetics. So this is designed to be a warm-up, kind of getting students thinking about genetics and the verbs, the vocabulary that they're going to use as they go through the genetics unit and things like that. So we have a table of contents as always, and then these first few slides are really about getting students to think about traits and what traits are. So they're going to think about eye and hair color, some basic traits. And then they're going to start thinking about ones they may not think about as often. So things like if their ear labs are attached or unattached, or if they have dimples. And then how their thumb looks when they give a thumbs up. So if their thumb is straight or bends back, these are all different traits that are coded by our genetics. So really just get students thinking about what is a trait and how genetics start to apply to them. This is actually an activity that you could do if you didn't want to necessarily assign this for grades. This would be a great activity. There's a lot of interactive Google Docs, Google Slides type programs out there. I'm thinking like Pear Deck and things like that, where you could actually have students respond to this over Pear Deck and have kind of those digital choral responses and things like that if you wanted to do it that way. And then here, this is a place where they can think about traits that they actually share with family members. And I have it set up so that they can either write about traits that they know they share. I have the same hair color as my mom. I have the same eye color as my brother. But they can also upload a picture. So if they just wanted to upload a family picture, in the classroom, I like to have students bring in pictures if they want. And we kind of have a day of sharing pictures and talking about traits that we share. Again, to generate those ideas and those conversations about what are traits and how do genetics affect us in our everyday, this is who we are kind of a way. And then finally, here, this is where they're kind of starting to apply it. So they're thinking about traits that are unique for them. Nobody else in their family shares it, at least that they're aware of, or traits that they do share. And then they're thinking about why they might have traits that are in common with family members or different with family members. With both of these slides, if you have students who, for whatever reason, maybe don't know their genetically related family members, you can always take these slides out or modify them to let students talk about how they do share, we still share, even people we aren't related to, we still share traits with those people. And, why is that? And that can get into that conversation of the human gene pool and how there are just certain traits that are available to all humans as part of the human race. And then our genetics code for which traits we get, and then those genetics, how they get passed down. So there are ways to adapt this in those situations. And so I like to be aware of my population of students and then adapt accordingly if I need to with both of these activities. And then finally, there's a reading section that's just going to get into the basics of genetics. So very, very basic. What is it when we're talking about genetics? What is DNA? Where do we find it? Quick review on organelles, specifically the nucleus, and then just a little bit about DNA base pairs and how this looks, making an analogy to cookbooks. So really thinking of DNA as a cookbook and how it's a recipe for different traits that we have, but then also talking a little bit about how we have two cookbooks, one that comes from the female parent, one from the male parent, that then creates pairs of chromosomes, prepping them for that idea of alleles and how the rules of genetics are going to play out to determine which allele gets used to code for each trait, which comes up in later lessons. So again, the reading summary and then a little glossary of the vocabulary that they go over in this lesson. And then finally, just a review questions. So just a few reviews. So again, this is not a lot of activity here. Really, this is your anticipatory set, getting students thinking about the vocabulary, thinking about traits, thinking about genetics, and the traits that we share as part of the human population. So that's a look at the Introduction to Genetics lesson. I hope that you found that valuable. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.